So here I am, I'm making a practice of kind of journaling my thoughts. These might be of interest to you, and they might not. It might just be very self-indulgent, which is kind of what I want to talk about today, self-indulgence in a sense. But I figured, this is a good way of me helping to sort of promote my work, which I need to do. It's my living. And it's also a way of sharing things that could be of benefit to others and giving them away for free. So let's go ahead and talk about this self-indulgence. I mean, I read a book called Cutting Through Spiritual Materialism by Chogyam Trungpa many years ago now, possibly 12 years ago. And I remember feeling like a punch in the stomach when I was reading it, because of the ways in which I was using spirituality to strengthen my ego. By ego, I don't really mean my personality or individuality in this case. I mean more like, I use this term a lot, it's kind of a fundamental insecurity, this idea of being insufficient in some way. And so we find ways to label ourselves. We find ways to bolster ourselves. We find ways to become more important. People become rich and they drive around in their Lamborghini and and we look at it and we're like, wow, that person's rich. They're kind of showing off. They're showing us that they're important in some way. Or that people seek fame because they want that adoration. They want to be important in some way. They don't just want to be, Joe Blogs down the road. Well, it's the same with spirituality. And this is a problem, actually, because in spirituality, it's a little more sinister. Spirituality is a very, very precious and beautiful thing when it shows up in, the traditions of old. The Eastern traditions in particular, I'm very fond of. And in these traditions, people would leave behind their material lives. Not everyone. There are definitely householder traditions, traditions in which people had jobs, they had lives, they had certain statuses in society, and so there are many different ways of practicing. But the point I'm trying to make is that when these traditions were practiced, there was a sense of letting go of attachment. Whether you're a householder, whether you're a hermit, whether you're a walking sadhu, you can live with a kind of loosening of attachment, a sort of non-attachment to personal desire. And the problem is that with the transplanting of Eastern culture into the West, we have taken these practices and we've made them about our personal desires and our personal attachments. And that's complex, that's problematic, because we run the risk of watering down these beautiful traditions, and in fact subverting them, making them about something that they were actually trying to combat. So I feel quite strongly about this. It's a complex situation, isn't it? Because in a sense, it's good that people can go to a yoga class in order to become healthier or to gain a little bit more well-being, self-esteem, peace of mind. These things are all very beautiful. And many will argue, I know my partner Chris argues this, that if it's an entryway, surely it doesn't matter. Because if their person's interested, they will go deeper into the tradition. And I agree with her. on the one hand. And on the other hand, I am concerned that this watering down will make things harder to access. It'll be harder to access the genuine article. Not only harder to access, harder to identify. For me, it has been a big journey trying to discover legitimate practices in a sea of narcissism. And I'll be so bold to say that it's narcissistic to the degree that a lot of people just want to be something, to become something, to be better than something, to be better than someone else, to have power over others. And it's not good. But of course, I am highlighting a very particular angle here, and I know that things are more nuanced than what I'm expressing. But I feel the need to cut through the bullshit here, cut through the smoke and mirrors of narcissism, of incorrect understanding of these practices. Now, yes, I was talking about my journey, wasn't I? I started out, touching on meditation as a way to have wild and mystical experiences. I think a lot of people get into plant medicine for this kind of reason. So I was hoping to have some, miraculous, energetic or metaphysical experience. And actually, believe me, I've had many, many, many of these. And now I realize that isn't the reason for these traditions. It's the kind of side effect, we have this interesting psychic phenomenon, but it's a side effect. It's not the goal. But that's how I kind of entered, and partially because I was suffering in some way, and partially because I had a lack of inner peace, and I wanted that inner peace. Well, due to making many metaphysical mistakes, you could say, I made that lack of inner peace worse for myself. And the desire to overcome it became stronger. So, I continued exploring, and in a way I still do, but that's another story. And I came across Buddhism, which I have always returned to as a kind of voice of sanity within a world of chaos. Buddhism has this non-attachment as the center of it, right? And compassion, wisdom and compassion from a Mahayana point of view, a great vehicle. Wisdom, recognizing that, well, there are multiple things, recognizing that everything is impermanent, everything will pass. So whatever good thing happens to us, we feel happy, but that will pass. Whatever bad thing happens, we feel sad, well, that will pass. Everyone we love will pass. Everyone we hate will pass. We will pass. This is very, very important to recognize, I believe. The voice of sanity, when we're searching for mystical experiences, for example, they will pass. When we're seeking riches, well, we could lose it, or we'll die eventually. We can't take them with us. So Buddhism has really been a voice of sanity. And the compassion element. No, I haven't finished with the wisdom part, sorry. I'll go back to that. Well, and the wisdom is also this interdependence of phenomena. Yeah, we think we inherently exist as individuals, but really, what are we without the others around us? We're born from a mother and a father. We are basically facets of two people united to create one person, apparently one person. But that one person is a buildup of cells and buildup of, atoms, and we are also dependent on the food we eat, the water we drink, the air we breathe. That we aren't separate from everything around us, and the food we get comes from the earth or animals, or and that's come from nature, and that comes from the interplay of the elements, and there is no inherent independence from the rest of existence. So that wisdom is very, very powerful in terms of recognizing that we do not exist as an independent entity. So all of these desires to bolster our ego, this sort of spiritual materialism, is it's just running on a false notion, isn't it? That we are something important, individual, more important than something else, right? So that's wisdom. And then we talk about compassion, and compassion to me is like the antidote to the potential nihilism that wisdom can bring. Because if we don't really inherently exist as an individuality, you could argue that, well, it doesn't really matter what I do and how I behave. So that could be a dangerous view, right? So we add compassion to the mix, that we are able to care for others, do things for others, help others. This orientation is a kind of purpose for being. And at a deeper level, we come to realize that compassion exists within us all. There's a kind of generous quality to life, even. This is beautiful. So this compassion and this wisdom, for me, have been mainstays. They have been a guiding light in my life. But on the journey for something real, I came across all kinds of things that a lot of the time these days people are practicing manifestation, aren't they? They talk about, I want to manifest this. And I definitely was introduced to that by my mother, actually. She gave me the secret when I was very young. And I personally wish that it never happened. I never read that book. The reason I say that is because it has the potential to make people self-centered. It has the potential to create narcissism. The amount of time somebody has had a negative interaction, or problems in their life, problems with other people, and then the question they're asking is, how did I manifest this, and how did I manifest this person like this? And so rather than dealing with the situation as it is, dealing with the person, dealing with the whole thing, it's about how can I manipulate myself so that I don't need to experience this. I think this is a little dangerous. And then there's this message in The Secret, which was to, imagine that whatever you want to achieve, receive, become is a reality now, and you feel it and imagine it to be real. And I do think that there is some truth to this process. But the danger is that people I've seen, and definitely in my younger years was victim to this. I've seen people reject what is in front of them and sort of not allow any negative thought to happen. Sort of pushing it aside, just think positively, not even talking about difficult things. And I don't think that's how it works. I don't think rejecting anything negative will manifest something positive. In fact, from my understanding with and practice, 15 years with hypnotherapy, this pushing the negative stuff into the unconscious mind, it just perpetuates the problem. It's like just saying an affirmation, saying I'm rich when you're poor. Your unconscious mind is rejecting your affirmation, I'm rich. It's just putting I'm poor there. It's strengthening that. So rejecting the negative is not a good idea. And of course, we get the opposite side of that, in which people become obsessed with integrating their shadow. Again, another self-centered thing. It's just like, okay, I feel this. How can I face this shadow? And I get this a lot as a hypnotherapist, where people will tell me that they want to find the root cause for everything. I need to find the root cause. Now, what they mean is they want to find the incident that started it. But really, knowing what happened, it doesn't necessarily relieve you from it. Well, what matters is where you focus your attention. So if you're focusing your attention continuously, look, a little bit of attention is important to recognize something. And then because it becomes, it moves from the unconscious into the conscious. So when you move something from the unconscious into the conscious, then you can look at it, and then you can choose not to feed it anymore. Now, if it's happening in the unconscious and you're not really recognizing it, that's a problem, right? Because it will continue to do things under the surface of your awareness. So it's good to uncover things. But when, for example, in psychotherapy, oftentimes people will look at the same problem over and over and over again, and they almost become obsessed with it. And this is a danger I see, that we become obsessed with the shadow work, another self-centered approach. Now, the goal is to not allow these things to hold us back, right? I mean, we go to therapy in order to heal or to become better people, maybe. And then oftentimes, much like we like to identify as being amazing, being better than, being famous or being rich or whatever, we also like to identify with the negative stuff. So we identify with the fact that I was abused as a child, or we identify with the fact that I was an addict. We identify with these things, right? And there's nothing wrong with it per se, but it's just that when it grasps our attention too much, we become too self-centered. And this leads me to the point that the traditions of old, as far as I can tell, were about the greater good. They weren't about me, becoming better, becoming greater. This is almost like a kind of capitalist idea. And of course, if you grew up in that kind of culture, and most of us did, then you might not even realize that that is behind the scenes of your experience. This desire to become more, to become bigger. But if you look at, say Confucianism, it has how you integrate and work with society as a central sort of tenet. And if you look at Buddhism, we have this compassion and this being of benefit to sentient beings. Through Christianity, we have the charity, we have the mitzvah in Judaism. And the world religions have, that love thy neighbor as the kind of the center of it. That's interesting, isn't it? So, how did we go from love thy neighbor to being, well, interested in our own personal power or importance? Well, it's a fundamental kind of ignorance and that insecurity I spoke about. But it's also the fact that these traditions are becoming distorted through capitalism. People took yoga, they found ways to make money with it. People took Christianity and turned it into cults where there's a central leader, central figure. People have done this, and they've done it for a long time. It's not new, but now with the social media, now with this intense focus on the self, on the individual, it's become much more prevalent. And so, going back to my journey, I've discovered, the Buddhism. I discovered Kriya Yoga. Now, Kriya Yoga is interesting because it's not very flashy. It won't make you really flexible. It won't make you sexy. And in fact, it's hard to convince someone it's a good thing. Not that I try to convince anyone it's a good thing. I basically don't really talk about it very much. And the reason being is because it's such a subtle, personal, transformative practice. It's about realizing, nature beyond that insecurity, that desire to be whatever. And it's not just something you can teach. It requires focus. It requires discipline. It requires... it's not something you can teach in a class, I should say. It's something that needs to happen through continual practice and continual focus. And this is also a part of it, right? We want to manifest this thing because we want something quick. We want something to change quick. We take a plant medicine because we want to have this experience quickly. But really, It's a kind of capitalistic idea. We want this experience. We want to buy something. We want to achieve something, earn something, get something, you know. Well, what if it's not about having an experience? I like to talk about this this Tibetan word gom, which is used for meditation, but gom means to familiarize yourself with something positive. So practicing Kriya Yoga, for example, is familiarization with your divinity. And you've got to do it again and again and again. It's not just something that bam, it happens and you're free. It's a familiarization. I've been training in Negong Qigong with Damo Mitchell. He's a very good teacher. And in order to get results from it, you know, and I'm getting healthier because of it and more energy. And this is because of continual repeated practice. It requires discipline, it requires focus, and it's not like there's just an experience suddenly where bang, everything's wonderful. It's a process of familiarization with the subtle body, familiarization with how the body works, how the mind works, how they interact with each other. Buddhism is, you know, a continual practice. In Mahayana Buddhism, we train in the perfections, the paramitas of, you know, generosity, of patience, of joyfulness, of concentration, etc. Right? Now we practice these as a practice. It's not that we just suddenly are all of those things. We have to cultivate them. Cultivation, in my mind, is the sign of a real tradition. If there is a cultivation component, it's not like a bang and bells and whistles or an amazing experience or, you know, instant enlightenment or something. It's about this cultivation. So cultivating, I really like this word. The demo uses it a lot. I appreciate that. And that's the thing with plant medicines, you know, sort of magic, or like going to a healer. We want this bang transformational experience, but there's always something else. It's a process. It's cultivation. Whatever you learn, you need to put into practice. I don't know a person who's become enlightened through plant medicine. Maybe they're just not revealing that to me, but or maybe I'm not seeing something, you know. But as I see it, there is a purpose to these things. I mean, we can heal. It's medicine. But like with every medicine, you don't just take it and then you're healed. It'd be wonderful if that was the case, you know, that you just take a pill and you become enlightened or something. But then what would life be without the journey, the cultivation? So, yeah, practicing cultivation, important. It's not about achieving or gaining something. It's just about cultivating and familiarization. And so, you know, I've been doing hypnotherapy for a long time. Hypnotherapy, I would say most of the time, deals with habits and patterns, mental habits, emotional habits, physical habits. Now, what is a habit? It is something that is repeated, something that we do again and again and again, and then it becomes kind of self-perpetuating, doesn't it? Like, I don't know, you know, when I have a shower, apologies for the image, when I have a shower, I have a particular sort of sequence in which I clean myself, because I've trained that. I don't even think about it. It just kind of happens by itself. Much like the way that I prepare a cup of tea. I don't need to think about it so much. I've done it so much. It has a kind of momentum behind it. And the way I speak, I don't think about how do I speak? How do I put words out? How do I shape my mouth in different ways? I don't think about it. It just happens because I've trained that habit. Trained the habit of reading. I can read words. I understand these symbols that when I was a kid, they were just squiggly shapes or pointy shapes or whatever. And then over time, I began to associate sounds with those shapes, and then I could put those shapes together and associate meaning with them. They become words. And then I can string that meaning together and create sentences. And I have the ability to do that through the force of habit. I don't need to think about it anymore. So we want to basically, through a good spiritual practice, we want to cultivate positive habits. What is a habit? As I said, it's a repetition. So like the Buddhist example, we're training in generosity or with patience. Let's go with generosity. In order to be generous, you need to just do it, right? And the more you do it, the more it becomes your MO. The more it becomes your modus operandi, the more it becomes a part of who you are. But you have to practice it. You have to keep practicing, so that it becomes a part of you. The thing is that we're always practicing something. So if you're being like really stingy and non-generous, that's a practice as well. You're cultivating that habit. So really, the traditions also remind us, they serve as a reminder to be diligent. To notice when we're cultivating the wrong habit, going down the wrong path, going in the wrong direction. And then they can remind us to cultivate a better habit, like generosity over stinginess. Now, I get this with hypnotherapy as well. People are anxious, for example. I get a lot of anxiety. These days, I get a lot of anxiety. I get a lot of clients with anxiety. I mean, I have my fair share of anxiety. It's a part of life. But I get a lot of clients with anxiety, and oftentimes, the client hasn't realized that they've developed a habit of anxiety, that they're constantly looking for problems. They're constantly looking for reasons to strengthen that feeling, right? You might be familiar with this, actually. You might be familiar with, something happened that made you feel a sense of anxiety. And then, I don't know, you got distracted by a conversation or something, and you've forgotten what it was, but you still got that feeling. And so you're trying to remember, why do I feel bad? Why should I be feeling bad right now? So that is a habit in a way. That becomes a habit when we're continuously searching for that feeling. So oftentimes in trance or hypnosis, we can sort of highlight that habit is happening, so that becomes conscious to the client, and then they can choose to cultivate the other habit of being at peace. And this can work charms. It can be really, really amazing. So I'm really, amazed when that happens, that works. And then it's up to the client to continue to cultivate that, like I said, it's not a bells and whistles transformation moment. It's a journey, and then it needs to continuously be practiced. So what am I talking about? I kind of have gone in multiple directions here. The point is that I've explored quite a lot. There's a lot more that I haven't told you about, teachers that I've met, and some brilliant ones, some very, very skilled ones, some very advanced ones. And I'm grateful to have been able to learn from them, though ultimately it's my journey, and I make mistakes. I try to rectify them. There's some mistakes I've made many times, and some I've learned from very quickly. I'm definitely not perfect. But this is another thing, is this capitalization, this kind of McDonald's spirituality. We're looking for a guru who can just bring us to enlightenment. I see this in this kind of a neo-Advaita tradition. People go to a satsang and it's just like the person's talking, and then suddenly, wow, we become enlightened, and it's not really how it works. This has often been related to Papaji. If you know Papaji, he was a kind of non-disciple, because he's never claimed that he had disciples, of Ramana Maharshi. And Papaji had this intense ability to share an experience with his disciples. Now, I've met numerous Papaji disciples. In fact, I played music in a band with one of them. And some of them have sort of just claimed to have been they're enlightened, right? But it seems like it's just more of a practice, actually, more of a cultivation. The woman I was in the band with, she lived with Papaji for like 8 years, I believe, and she speaks about what she learned as the way I hear it is that it's a kind of a practice, a non-practice, but there's a familiarization process. It's a cultivation. It's not just that she's enlightened and the whole satsangs or something. And there are a lot of people that have claimed that. And so I'm sharing this because I don't want to fall in the trap of this McDonald's consumer spirituality. That there are those who claim to have become enlightened from a specific teacher, and I'm here to say that actually, I know people that have trained with him, and it's not quite like that. So be careful. Be careful about who you're learning from, and remember that it's your journey, and no teacher can do your journey for you. You have to take the journey. So whether you want to view your teacher as an exalted, whatever, divine being, or just as a human, because they are human, it doesn't matter. What matters is that you put things into practice. You put into practice what you can, and you don't what you can't, and you try and you try and you try, and you cultivate. A good teacher will just be able to answer your questions, will be able to guide you. Well, I think I've talked quite a long time here. My point is that there's a lot of superficiality within the spiritual world, within these arts within these practices, and I just wanted to highlight that it's really a journey, it's a cultivation, it's a practice, and you need to take responsibility for that. And it's about others as much as it's about oneself. It's even more about others in some ways. Don't get caught in that ego trap. Don't make the mistakes that I and many others have. If you can. Okay. Thank you very much.